You're on mute, Yusra.
So I've done the all mute thing again. Thank you. So good afternoon and welcome everyone to the Economy and Neighbourhoods Scrutiny panel. My name is Councillor Yusra Hussain and I'm the chair of the panel. The meeting is being held virtually on public health grounds and the national emergency that was declared in relation to the heatwave. Please can I ask all members to raise your hand physically or within the image chat bar to speak, and please keep your microphone on mute unless you're speaking. Please can I ask all members of the panel to introduce themselves, and shall we start with the bottom of my screen, which is Will?
Hello, I'm not a member of the panel, but I am the cabinet member responsible for Greener, Kirklees and Culture. I'm Councillor Will Simpson, and that incorporates in my portfolio the waste strategy, and my colleague Councillor Mather, who isn't here today, has waste operations. So parts of the agenda today sit between the two of us. And thank you very much, Chair. It's nice to see you all.
Tyler?
Tav Hawkins, councillor for the Dalton ward.
Matthew?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Matthew McLaughlin, Labour and Cooperative Party, Councillor for Colne Valley.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Afak Botan, Councillor for Hetman Lake Ward.
Graham, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Graham West. I'm the Service Director for Highways and Street Scene.
Jonathan?
Good afternoon, I'm Jonathan Milner. I'm one of the new co-optees on the scrutiny panel. Good afternoon.
And Jane. Thank you. Jane?
Good afternoon, I'm Jane Emery. I'm also a new co-optee as first full meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introductions.
You're on mute again.
You're on mute, Yusra.
Do you know what? I'm so used to face-to-face meetings now, it's getting difficult. Trying to manoeuvre from two documents. Okay, so the first agenda item is obviously apologies for absences. So I believe we have an apologies from Councillor John Taylor. And I've also got to mention, I believe that Will Conley has to leave for 2 p.m. due to unforeseen commitment that has arisen, but Rachel and Graham will remain in the meeting when they present the report. And obviously we have Councillor Will with us. So that's apologies, unless there's anyone else. Jodie?
Hi, Chair. Chris Friend, co-optee, has also sent apologies today.
Thank you. So minutes of the previous meeting, which is item agenda 2. Can we agree that the minutes of the meeting of the Economy and Neighbourhood Scrutiny Panel held on 7th of April 2022 be approved as a correct record? Can we agree the minutes?
Can we agree?
I believe that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I can agree them because, but I can't agree them because I wasn't there. Jodie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I sought advice on this prior to the meeting, with us having a lot of new panel members and co-optees. Strictly speaking, you don't have to have been present at the previous meeting to agree the minutes. You can move them still, and in agreeing to move the minutes, you're not as such agreeing to any of the decisions that were made. You're just agreeing that they were a correct record of the previous meeting.
Agreed then.
Yeah. Thank you. Any interest to declare? Sorry, Jodie, go on.
Sorry, that was an old hand.
Okay, no worries. Any interest to declare by panel members? No. I can see shaking heads. No, none. That's fine. So item 4, which is admission of the public. Do we have any items by admission of the public, Jodie?
No, all items held in public session today.
Thank you. Item 5, deputations and petitions. Jodie, do we have any?
No deputations or petitions.
Item 6, any public question time? Any public questions, Jodie?
No questions from the public, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 7, which is the resources and waste strategy delivery update, pre-scrutiny. And that's to receive an update on resource and waste strategy, which I believe, is that right? Jodie?
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Yep. Can I have the officer present the report, please? I believe it's Will, Rachel.
Hello, Chair. Thank you. So, just as introductions, I'm Will Acorn, the Head of Operational Services. Some of the waste strategy sits under my area. We're just here today. We've got a cabinet report that's going in August. It follows on from the adoption of our new resources and waste strategy last year, which we've been in delivery of, but we've reached a point now where some of the items requiring the delegation to spend. So obviously we're bringing the cabinet report so that we get the right delegations and draw down on some of that funding. But we thought it was worth coming just to talk through some of the items that the money is being allocated against, just bring it to life a little bit and talk through what some of the initiatives and get some of your sort of initial feedback and thoughts on it. Any things that scream that you want us to include or look at, because a number of these items are still in the design phase. And so but we need obviously the funding in place first to move some elements of it forward. So Rachel's got a short presentation that will sort of take us through it. Over to you, Rachel.
Okay, just a couple of seconds whilst I just bring up that presentation. Should be there any second. And it should be there. Is that right?
That's through, yeah.
Okay. So as Will was just saying, that we are looking to go to Cabinet on the 9th of August and looking to ask for the delegated authority to draw down approximately 3 million of the previously allocated budget to allow us to start to roll out some of these initiatives. So there will be a report that will be submitted to Cabinet that outlines the ask in a bit more detail, but the summary of that report is shown on the slides here. On this slide, we've got 7 initiatives that we are set to implement and deliver in line with the timeline set out in the waste strategy and their associated budgets. The improved litter bin facility, the glass trial and the reuse shop are in their first stage of planning. And the community reward scheme, the environmental enforcement, innovation and the bulk reuse are in the early development stage at the moment. So I can give a brief overview of each of those projects, if that's okay. So if I could just move on to the next slide. So yeah, as Will said, just to give a bit of a flavour of what the sort of things we're looking to deliver. So the community reward scheme, it's something that we set in the waste strategy. The idea is about giving back to communities, and we've got and we've got 2 ideas at the moment. So one is related to the idea of a community chest. So that could be small grants for practical items or the provision of resource to support local waste minimisation initiatives. So we know there are lots of creative things going on in our communities, people setting up their own initiatives. And we'd like to encourage those further. So, for example, something like that could be giving support to a nappy lending library, or giving support to tools or purchasing tools that are needed for litter picking volunteers. So we'd ensure that each ward would be sort of represented equally in terms of funds available, so that we're not inadvertently favouring one area or one group over other groups. And we might do something like it would be an application process, and so we could have a little panel that would choose, or we could get residents or the local communities to bid on their favourite initiative to then fund. there's lots of ways we could do it and make it quite interactive and fun and kind of high profile. Another idea for a community reward is to actually use rewards as an incentive to for things that we need residents to change, perhaps. So that might be improving the use of communal bins or reducing contamination and littering. Reducing contamination or littering. So we might look at ideas to either reward on an individual basis, so that might be vouchers for complying or putting the right things in your green bin when you put that out, or it might be actually using a reward for something like more of a community asset. So that's the idea for a community reward scheme that we're looking at right now. So I'm just going to go through them all, and then I guess if there's any questions, but just let me know if there's any as I go through them as well. So the reuse shop, you're probably aware of this already. It's the first phase is already underway with the reuse containers at 2 of our household waste sites. So that's one at Emerald Street in Huddersfield and one at Weaving Lane in Dewsbury. So the second phase is the setting up and opening of a reuse shop. So there will be expenditure related to the communications of that, signage that link the shop to the household waste sites, and costs that will support the trial. So it's a trial, so we're wanting to use a trial period to then collect data, the challenges that we gave from the household waste sites, and also the success of the reuse shop itself, and look at that in terms of the viability of a longer term reuse shop option. So we'll require some feasibility and site surveys, initial investigations, and also the procurement of a longer term solution. We're assuming it's going to be fantastic and we'll want to continue it. There might be that we come back in the future for an ask related to actually depending on what the options are for that longer term option. The improved litter bin facilities. So we would like to invest more in our street cleansing resource that hasn't had a significant funding for a couple of years now. And the litter bins are one of the key resident-facing aspects of the cleansing service. So there will be 2 phases, and as mentioned, phase 1 is underway at the moment, and that's the comprehensive auditing of all the existing litter bins and building a database of the location and the condition of those bins. And the review of that. So we want to include a discussion at ward level as part of that replacement planning, because we know that that local knowledge is key to understanding how the bins are used, whether we've got them in the right places. And that audit and that community-based information will then be used to plan a litter bin replacement programme that will take place over 2 to 3 years. There will be a phase 2 of the litter improvement facilities, and that will be looking at how we can introduce some really good on-street recycling bins at and we'll start with a trial of it at selected locations. So for example, we're interested in trying these at certain schools, for example. So we can also tie that into education to school pupils about recycling and litter issues. One of the things that's in the really early stage of development at the moment and research is investment in technology to target environmental crime. So we know there's new technology out there that can make the process of environmental enforcement more efficient and cost effective. So we would like to research into what those are, and then trial what might be we think the best for Kirklees. So, for example, at the moment, it might be something that helps to more accurately identify vehicles used for fly tipping, which is something that sometimes normal CCTV doesn't pick up very well and struggles to do. So, yes, I think that's that one. I'm just going to move on to the last slide then. So the other things that we're looking at introducing and doing in the next couple of years. So there'll be a glass trial collection, hopefully. So we have We know from Waste Strategy survey in 2020, I think it was, that residents strongly support the return of curbside glass collection. And we know also that central government is outlining in their national waste strategy, that they might wish for local authorities to collect glass separately at the curbside. So to help inform the best options and the best route for Kirklees, we plan to trial a curbside glass collection to see what would work best in terms of the types of containers and the hire of a temporary hire of a different type of vehicle that we can use for that, so that using that data from a trial, we'll be able to set out recommendations and future costs for an authority rollout of a curbside glass collection. We have already for the introduced a fully automated booking system for the bulky collections, which has been a great success. So the next step we want to look at is introducing a way of collecting bulky items such as furniture and white goods that can be reused. So an initial scope has been written, and the next step is to research into this further with full benchmarking options and costs about how we might do that. So the ideas that are being looked at the moment include an in-house run bulky collection that then delivers to a partner charity, or a partner to be a reuse partner specialist to be provided with support. Maybe that's direct funds or resources such as a van to collect and redistribute bulky items. So that's to be really researched and looked into and options presented. We would like to have the bulky reuse provision to also link in and support and help those settled into our homes and neighbourhoods tenancies or social services or homeless teams also. And then the last thing that's in the report that will be sent to Cabinet is to do with the depot review. And so some of our commitments for our resources and waste strategy for Kirklees, specifically glass and an introduction of a food waste collection, would require greater depot space. So we know that there's that possibility again from central government that the local authorities might need to collect these items in the future. So we're looking at getting ourselves in a position where we are ready to be able to do that if that's the case. But we need more depot space for the additional vehicles that would be needed to collect those additional items. So our depots in the north, which is at George Street, and south, which is at Vine Street, are at maximum capacity at the moment. So we are looking at needing to do some detailed surveys, feasibility reports to help us locate and find the most suitable space for an expanded depot facility. So all of these items will be at all of the planning stages, as always, provided in briefings and members kept updated. But that's the end of my update for now.
Thanks, Rachel. So that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. There's quite a lot going on, as I'm sure you appreciate, but what we wanted to do was give you a flavour of what each of the things we're doing and the commitments in there, and also give you an opportunity to say, actually, we like that, we really want you to look at this bit, that really interests me. Like Rachel said, this is not the last opportunity for people to engage with it. This is really securing the funding, and as we go into more detailed design and delivery, we'll be speaking to councillors, the member reference group, back to scrutiny, etc. But this is just as initial thoughts ahead of the cabinet report going in, so we can make any initial changes that we might want to. So now it's back to yourself, Chair.
Thank you, Graham and Rachel. That's a really insightful report. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask for comments and questions, and I'll try to take it down in order of what's come up on the screen. So we'll go with Councillor Afak first, then Councillor Matthew's hand went up second, and then Councillor Tyler afterwards. Councillor Afak, do you want to comment or questions?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel, for that presentation. It's very informative and obviously very well thought through. Just a couple of questions. In my ward of Hetman Dwight, my colleagues and I have investigated cameras in sort of 2 or 3 grot spots that we know where people dump rubbish. And obviously it costs money to get that removed, and it is a constant kind of issue that we had. And we actually investigated doing this of our own volition, to have some cameras where we could have playback on our phones, and we could send that to enforcement. I think the stumbling blocks that we had were, you know, the power supply and how we would actually do that, because we can't install them ourselves. But I'm glad that you've raised this as part of the plan. What my question is around that is, what kind of timelines are we looking at roughly in terms of maybe looking at that AI and looking at those cameras that we would be able to sort of potentially one time have in our areas around there? Because of course, having cameras, and if we can get that enforcement and the fines that we can then levy on people that are found to have dumped litter, would pay for the cameras. So that's my first question. And the second one was really about, you talked about the rewards really for sort of for communities in terms of doing the right thing. Would that also encompass, or could we encompass something about rewards for community groups that have set up volunteers? I mean, in Hetmondwike, I just want to shout out Keep Hecky Tidy, which are absolutely fantastic, that take time out of themselves and are growing as a group and buy their own things. We have supported them as a council and as ward councils from our budget, but they, you know, the work they do is amazing. And I think a lot of the time it's a thankless task. And, you know, if there were sort of rewards and things and vouchers that we could give to people like that, to groups like that, that would be absolutely amazing. So just those two questions, but thank you so much.
Do you want me to take them, Rachel?
Yeah, that's fine.
So obviously we've made quite a number of changes this year on our fly tipping approach. You know, we focused it in one team that also do the enforcement. I think you'll probably read in the Examiner and other places a lot more activity in the courts, which I think is paying dividends. But you're right, we can't be everywhere all the time. So we are looking at where we can use technology. We have trialled some cameras over the last year. They've been very successful, but as you say, Councillor, it's dependent on power supply, on suitability of lighting columns, things like that. So what we want to look at and trial is perhaps some self-powered ones. There's some AI cameras that can look at, you know, the got spots at junctions where people just wind the window down and throw it out, but automatic number plate recognition, things like that. There are existing technologies. But at the moment, we don't know timeframes. Obviously, the trial we're looking at in the next 12 months, but that's to build up a business case, as you say, to then move forward and say, this is what we want to invest. This is the level of income we think we'll get to it. This might be some of the resources that need to be behind the team in enforcement officers, officer time, things like that, to have a proper business case built up from it. Because like I said, it's emerging technology. It's not massively established across the country yet, but we want to trial it and see what it does in here. On the reward scheme, I think you're exactly right. We are more nervous about perhaps the individual resident rewards because there is a danger we may be rewarding some areas and not others. So we are much more positive, shall we say, on those community-led ones. You know, is it giving people litter picking facilities? Is it giving them equipment? Is it some sort of rewards for recognising the work that they've done? And we have a lot, you know, we set up Natural Kirklees. We have 130 plus organisations under that umbrella, but I think that's somewhere that we can do more. And that's why we're looking to do more. So I think that's probably where the direction of travel will be. But I don't want to sort of preempt anything yet, but we'll be bringing that through and having those discussions in much more detail as it gets more developed.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring Graham in before I bring Matthew. Graham.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up and add to the discussion around the use of CCTV, if that's okay. More recently, only last week, in actual fact, I started to look at our CCTV strategy across the council, and I've been reviewing some good best practice. I've been looking at the guidance around CCTV, and I do want to make sure that we are aligned, compliant, and have the assurances around any CCTV. So that won't slow this particular process down, but the use of technology, particularly around these type of items, CCTV and more, we need to make sure that we've got a very clear strategy, which will include the cameras for which Will is referring to from an enforcement point of view. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Jane, do you want to come in? I've seen your hand go up. Do you want to contribute to that?
on the rewards things, is there a way of engaging and recognising and rewarding small businesses which are heavy litter producers, with some takeaways with overflowing litter bins nearby? Could we consider something that, if that business provides and removes its own litter that it's produced in that way, bearing in mind they have to pay for it and they don't get free collections, whether that it's rewarded with a star, a gold star, that they're community involved and they're doing their part?
It's certainly an option we can consider. We obviously don't want to remove their own responsibilities, or sort of take the burden of some of those costs unnecessarily. But it may be, the larger SMEs, the larger companies, your McDonald's of the world, your takeaways, there's higher expectation there, I think, than perhaps some of the more local. So it's definitely something we could explore, I think, Rachel, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, yeah.
It's just in my own village, there's a hamburger place and they provide their own bins and they remove them. Yet there's another cafe that has a public bin right near it and it's always overflowing. So I thought there was some way of recognising if company is doing something.
No, I think
that's a great idea. Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
So go to Matthew next.
Thank you, Chair. Going to what you were talking about on the bulky collections, the third sector reuse partner, I was wondering if there was potential scope for a bit of joined up thinking here with the reuse shop, because it struck me that that's essentially the same function, which is reclaiming, recycling and upcycling is the modern phrase, isn't it, of products. It's just a slightly different kind of product. And it would seem to me to be more efficient to have one slightly larger storage and workspace rather than two smaller ones for essentially the same project. And I was wondering if that is an option you've explored, having those two things working practically together because they're essentially the same function.
Yes, definitely.
That's the sort of vision, isn't it, Rachel, that we want to head down?
Absolutely. So we're starting off the trial of the reuse shop with small items, so the clothes and shoes and things that you can put in, one person can carry into the container at the household waste sites. But absolutely, the longer term vision is that the bulky part of it will be a complete package somehow, linked to maybe the household waste site still. So yeah, absolutely, it's definitely on our agenda to look at how we can link that up.
I think it's important to say that we're not looking at one individual charity, should we say. The way that we set these things up, and Leeds have been successful in this as well, is that it's an umbrella. You set up a reuse network across the district, you make sure that people get the right equal opportunities to access the material, and you bring it all together. And by centralising it and bringing it together, you can look at apprenticeships, you can look at training, you look at all the sort of social benefits that come with that as well. So that's definitely where we want to head, and where some of these things have really matured that I've been involved in before. It does then link across into homes and neighbourhoods. It creates starter kits for people who are just moving into their first tenancy and don't have any furniture. So you can really, really drive the social benefits. We've made the first step in getting the bulky bookable service in, so that we know what is coming, where it is, and it's a managed process. Then it's much easier to start to split off the elements that are reusable or repairable into the sort of third sector partner there. So hopefully this will all start to come together into a sort of properly procured and managed partnership in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Will. I'm just going to bring in Councillor Tyler, sorry.
Oh, Yosra. Just a couple of questions that I've got really. In terms of the review of the bins itself, it's kind of defined in the presentation as more of an audit of the existing bins across the district. But I'm just trying to understand what the 2 million sort of covers. Is that include refurbishment costs for the existing bins? Is that more bins that could be looked into that? I'm just trying to understand the costings there a bit more. And the second question I've got is on the glass collections and the trial there. I'm just wondering if we can get a bit more of timeline on that, because I was under the impression the glass collections were coming back fully in 2025. I think was in a document a very while back. I don't know. The date seems to have shifted a bit on that, and just because we've done it quite recently, I'm just trying to understand the need for a trial as well on that. So because glass collections we were doing in Kirklees until fairly recently. I'll say fairly recently. It's probably about 10 years now, isn't it? I think, but just trying to understand that trial period as well there. So if you can provide a bit more info there, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. So the bin costs would be capital investment in new pieces of kit, essentially. At the moment, we're doing a phase 1 audit to understand exactly what's out there, what condition it's in, what might need to be repaired, also what usage level it has, because we have a lot of bins out there that aren't being used yet. We know we've got high demand areas where they may be better relocated. So it's not simply looking at replacing old for new. It's also looking at rationalising them, making sure they're the right thing in the right place. In order to help inform that is the second phase trials of different technologies. It's mainly focused on on-the-go recycling. So looking at things like new compaction in bins in parks, for example. So we need to empty them less. There's more demand over weekends, isn't there now? Sometimes we see the bins overflowing, but if we put a different type of technology in there, will that hold the litter over the weekend? And if it does, then obviously that's saving both the sort of environmental and the cost benefits there as well. So we then want to bring those two together and look at what worked on-the-go recycling and new technology versus where we might want to put them. We'll follow on with ward level discussions then, because obviously your areas best. So we want to bring the data to go, this is what it's telling us, this is a condition. These are the ones not being used. These are the ones being overused. Let's talk about where we might want to replace some of these and move some, but in a proper strategic approach and build up that business case. So there's significant sums involved because we have thousands and thousands of litter bins involved. And as you know, there've not been significant investment for quite a while. So some of them are in a very poor condition. So we wanted to do all this at once and do it properly, if that makes more sense. And on the glass collection trial, and it is a question that we often get asked. There was reasons why it was removed. The authority at the time had to balance the budgets. We had significant reductions in central government funding, and the decision was that we were going to prioritise caring for younger and more vulnerable people in society, and something had to give on the front line, and one of those was glass. It wasn't a choice that we necessarily wanted to make. It was one that was sort of forced upon us at the time, but there is that ambition to bring it back. The way we did collect it monthly in a box caused significant operational issues. It caused huge musculoskeletal issues to staff. We had 25% absence rates, so it wasn't a sustainable model anyway that we would want to bring back. And when we went and spoke to residents, and we got over 7,000 coming back to us on the waste consultation, providing a number of options from communal through to an insert, through to a box, through to a bin. There wasn't any clear winner, shall we say, in what the preference was. And I think that reflects the fact that Kirklees is so diverse in its people, diverse in its housing stock. And so what we didn't want to do was just pick one and try and force it into the district. So we want to be able to look at different ways of doing things in different areas and see if there's a much more place-based approach to that delivery, because we're going to be spending significant amounts of money. There's a significant investment and we want to get it right, because we won't be able to afford to do it a second time. I think what we're also looking, and is a bit more difficult for us, is that government keep kicking the can down the road on exactly what they're asking of us. So there is some call for mixing of different types of waste together, but then the government is saying they don't want that, but then they're not clarifying it. And what we're a bit nervous of at the moment is implementing something that may preclude us from getting funding, because this is going to be a significant revenue draw on the authority and capital. And if we implement something that means we can't access funding and puts us in a worse position, then we want to try and avoid that. But unfortunately, the sort of position we're in at the moment on a lack of clarity isn't helping the situation, which is why we're focusing more on trials. So at least we've got the data, evidence, understanding, speaking to people who are doing it to be ready. for when those tablets of stone come down and we know where we are and what we're doing and how to apply for the different funding streams.
Thanks, Will. Very, very useful with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will. Just going to bring Jane in. Jane? Oh, you've got a legendary hand then.
Legendary. That's nice.
Oh, yeah.
No other hand. I was just going to mention a couple of things that I picked up from the presentation. First of all, that's a very valid point you make. So what you're trying to say is that a lot of the policies and guidelines are not set out in stone. And if you were to do anything or implement anything, you'd, in effect, be financially affected by that if the government didn't accept it.
We could potentially, yeah. So if we implemented a system that they then told us was wrong and we needed to separate a different type of material, for example, we'd have to bear the costs of undoing that, if you see what I mean, in order to comply. Yeah. And a number of authorities, locally, regionally, have written to government on this to say we do need that clarity, especially as we're heading into a waste procurement and a new disposal contract as well, as are a number of others, that lack of clarity is just really stalling progress. At the same time as we have the issues in the supply chain, our vehicles are on 18-month order now. We've got some suppliers that are closing books like Ford, so they're not taking orders at the moment. So there's real supply chain issues coupled with that. And we just want government to really just, either way, just tell us what the rules are, so then we can comply with them, move on and make sure this authority is in the best position. Yeah.
Thank you for that information. Just a second point of question on the presentation. I know you mentioned reuse shops in centralised towns like Huddersfield and Dewsbury, which is fantastic. Is there any opportunity to grow that further to smaller towns like Batley, Hetton Wyke and other towns as well?
That's why I mentioned the network. So whilst we're trialling in Huddersfield, because we have a shop unit, it's our own, we can refurbish it, we can manage the trial better. That will inform us what the network might look like, what the cost and investment might look like as well. But it is a network. Like I said, we're looking at a borough-wide solution here that doesn't just look at one charity either. It looks across the whole landscape that we have and links in, including Batley, Heckman, Dwight, Clackheaton's as well as the sort of two main towns.
Okay, thank you for that, Will. I'll bring Matthew. Did you want to say anything because your hand was up earlier on?
No, it was one of the questions you asked, just for us, so that's fine.
Oh, okay, no worries. Graham, do you want to come in and any of the points that Will's made?
Yeah, thank you. I think the comments back from the panel are well received. Just on the bulky collections and the reuse shop, it does really put us in a position, and you've teased out the issue about having a more district-wide or borough-wide arrangement, but it really will support some of the challenges that our communities see from a cost of living at this particular time. So I just wanted to badge that particular element within our waste strategy with the cost of living challenges, because I think there's a real win there possibly. So I'm sure our teams will try to progress that as soon as we possibly can. I think regarding the trials and any trial that we might want to see within the district, I guess my job is to make sure that all resources that are available are used in the best way. And if we find that there's a trial that's required to get essential data and there's a cost associated with that, I just want to make sure that we are absolutely getting the value from money from that particular trial and the outcome. And as we heard from Will there, who articulated it better than I did, the glass collection is a moving feast as well as some other areas. So we need to be very sighted on ourselves going too early with these type of arrangements or going too late. We need to be very sensible in our approach. So there were just 2 points just to raise, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any further comments or questions on that particular agenda item? Yeah. I think I speak for everyone when I say this, Will, Rachel and Graham. It's when I was in sight of this, it's absolutely great piece of project that you're going forward with, and I really do welcome it. And you mentioned a very key point there, the cost of living, and looking at ideas of upskilling and up sort of lifting our products. So I was really, really pleased when I saw this presentation, and actually it's fantastic what you're trying to achieve. So hopefully you'll get some answers from the government and you'll be able to move forward on certain projects. But thank you. That's great. Unless there's anything further you want to add as officers, Will, Rachel, Graham, or Will even?
No, I think
Anyone
it's
comment?
really helpful comments. Like you said, some good steers there, and like I said, hopefully we can get all this over the line.
Thank you.
The other Will now.
Will, yeah, Will Simpson.
I just wanted to add my thanks as well, Yusra, to Will, Rachel, Graham, and everyone in the team, because, like you say, it's a fantastic piece of work. And however much it's cabinet members' photos that appear in the press releases, it's the fantastic team that do all of the work. So thank you very much to each of you and everyone that works with you.
Thank you.
Going to be blushing now.
If I'm not already.
I think it's exciting stuff.
It definitely is, and it's definitely the new thing. You know, upskilling and things and changing things and reinventing things. So I'm really looking forward to it, to be fair, because it's the hot key thing that the younger people sort of are looking at. So I'm really keen on it. So if that's all from Will, Rachel, and Graham, yep. Okay, thank you
very much.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. So we're just gonna move on to the next item, which is item 8, which is the work programme for 2022-2023. And I believe there's going to be a panel met informally on the 23rd of June to plan its, so we've already met, sort of thing. And we've drafted a work programme together for 2022 to 2023 municipal year. I did note there were some changes since the publication of the work programme, and the panel have sight of those updates, and there's a copy in front of you today. And obviously the updated copy has been submitted with the agenda to the next meeting of the Overview Scrutiny Management Committee, which is going to be held on the 26th of July, and they're going to oversee that work programme. So it's important to note that while the OSMC is overseeing our work programme and considering that, it's important to know that we also have the opportunity to make that fluid, depending on any reactive issues that come to light that we need to react to. So there's some fluidness to the work programme, so it's not concrete as such. So if there are things that do come up, we can prioritise them on a needs basis. Bearing that in mind, do members have anything to add in respect to the work programme, or any additional things that they've thought of now that they want to add? Are they happy with what's been drafted as a revised version?
Very happy myself.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, that concludes the meeting, really. That was the last item on the agenda. If there's any other business, I'm happy to take that now and we can look at that. Any other business items? No? That's fine. That's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending in this heat. I'm sure it's been quite warm where you are. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Chair.